Well, this is another massive subject to handle in a Q&A, but let me have a go at it. First of all, euthanasia, and if it comes back in the Northern Territory, it will kill a lot of Aboriginal people that shouldn't die, like it almost did before. It just absolutely terrorised people who were going into hospital. They thought now the doctor has power to kill. And under traditional Australian law, the original Australian law, nobody should do anything to kill somebody. They shouldn't give them any poison, any medicine, anything, or definitely not use a weapon to kill them. That is classed as murder. That is murder. So when they started to talk about this, and it was interesting because Dr. Nitschke was the one who was running it in the Northern Territory, and one of the words for sorcery in Arnhem Land was nitch nitch. So it sounded like Dr. Nitch Nitch, like Dr. Sorcerer. Now, contrary to most mainstream thinking about sorcery, people think, oh, well, that's part of Aboriginal culture. Well, it is part of Aboriginal culture, but it's part of the illegal Aboriginal culture. Sorcery is a no-no in the traditional Australian law, the original Australian laws. Sorcery was a no-no. It was a fact of life, like life and death is a fact of life, but it was seen as totally illegal according to the Madayan system of law. And according to the Jukkapar in Central Australia and the Altjaringa, the Madayan in Arnhem Land, it is totally against their law. Totally against their law. Now, there's a lot of confusion around it now because a lot of mainstream contemporary Aboriginal people think it's an active part of their law. Some even play silly games that they're going to blow didgeridoos against a football club and things like that. That is not the traditional law. It's a version of the settlers' view of Aboriginal culture and naming. So first of all, Yolngu saw euthanasia as a form of sorcery. But, and you always need to go to what we say, the yuru, or the but. If we don't hear the but side of a question or a response, we probably haven't heard the response. Now the but side of the response here is that you will have a form of euthanasia which was self-controlled. It was called da mukmaram, to close your mouth to food or water. To start to meditate and start to get yourself ready to cross over to the other side. There's a very clear understanding that life this side in the physical form is just that, life in a physical form on this side of the Great Divide. There's many, many versions of that in traditional Aboriginal society of what that looks like. Every clan has their own stories and so on and so on. Just like in the great search for the truth or mystery, the mystery about life and death and where we come from, where we go to, has been a conversation for thousands of years. Well, so it has in Aboriginal society, and there's a number of versions of it. But people will spend their life, if they're wise and sensible, not just learning to live, but also learning to die. Learning how to do the crossover. Learning to get yourself ready for that. And if somebody's critically ill, they might call their family together. They call their family together. It's not something their family does or anybody else does or a doctor signs off on, and none of those things at all. They call the important people of their family together, which I've said in other places, that covers at least 5 clans across your mother's people, right down to your grandchildren in their clan. They would be called together, all called together, a big group of people who were the essential citizens around you, your protective citizens. And you would make a statement saying, "Naratada mukmaram," I'm going to close my mouth to water and food, and go into a form of meditation. If you do that, you're only going to last 3 or 4 more days. But you spend your time then in getting ready for the crossover. You spend your time in meditation and prayer and thinking about maybe talking to some of the people that you wanted to make sure that you've sorted things out with them. You might even do that before your Dharmukmaram. You start going around and saying, look, we had some problems, you and I, can we put it behind us, da-da-da-da. So you sort out all those legal things, make sure that your inheritance is passed on to the right people, all the legal things that are done. This is why Aboriginal people hate being locked up in prison, in jail. They see it being imprisoned in jail, in hospitals. When doctors and other people take it upon themselves to paternalistic think that we're helping this person die, they're dying of cancer, can't definitely let them go home. They have to die here in hospital where we can look after them. Well, sorry, they don't want to stay there. They want to go home to sort out all these legal things and to be able to do the transition to the other side their own way. No member of the family, whether they're medical, whether they're legal, or any other person, this is the original Australian law, guys, the original Australian law, is allowed to intervene and take the rights off that patient that have said, Maratada Mukmaram, I'm going to close my mouth to water and food. Everybody respects it. Everybody comes together. Spend the last few days with that person and so on. And that person will then pass away. Some medical people these days who are not trained in any of this, doesn't matter if they come from an Aboriginal medical service or where they come from, they're not trained in any of this, will intervene in it sometimes. They'll come down to see the old person who's sick and is dying. Has the person eaten this morning? And the family used to say, truthfully say, no, they haven't. And, oh, look, they must eat. They must eat. We must keep them alive. And I know of a number of cases where nursing sisters have rushed in and tried to feed the person, and the person has got extremely angry with them because they've broken that meditation preparation, and it has to start it all over again. And then they get upset and say, why is this patient angry with me? Well, it's because you're culturally incompetent. You haven't got a clue about how half the world lives, the reality of the other half, which is not the Western Hollywood half. So euthanasia, if it comes back this way again, must take in the original Australian law. And if this was applied across the country, where the patients have total right. Okay, if they've lost their mind, well, hopefully they had a plan, they put a plan out and how they could end their last days. But people who have their mind, being able to say, this is where I'm heading, and the next chapter in my life now is to get myself ready and transition to the other side, because I'm ready to go there. And nobody should really stop that process.